the governor's recap just covered what is in this slide about this new process. We're no longer going to throw a restoration end date out there and walk away and leave meeting it for a governor or a mayor that's 4 terms down the road. We're coming forward to you today with a set of 2-year milestones that accelerate restoration and hold folks that are in office right now accountable. And I will also be proposing to you a new restoration end date that flows from that accelerated rate of implementation that you'll see in these milestones. Shortly after that November meeting in Washington, D.C., Secretary Bryant, who chairs your principal staff committee, convened an action team. I had the privilege of chairing that team. We had over 20 people on it from all over the jurisdictions, federal agencies, and outside stakeholders. And we were charged with going forth and coming up with guiding principles to develop these milestones, develop them in time to bring forward to this meeting, discuss options about contingencies, which you heard a little bit about in the, your morning session with the advisory committee meetings, and then also to come forward with a new restoration end date. So I will do that. Just to keep us on point here, these are water quality restoration milestones that we'll be talking about. As you all know, there are many goals throughout the Chesapeake Bay program. Many of them are captured in the 2000 commitment. There are fish habitat goals, there are land resource goals, there are water quality goals, there are toxic goals. We are talking about water quality restoration goals. The intent of these milestones is to increase the rate at which we reduce nitrogen and phosphorus from flowing into our waters. The guiding principle for these milestones is that while the meat of the milestones, the actions that each jurisdiction puts on the ground will likely vary considerably, that the overarching goal was to be as consistent and as comprehensive as possible. So that, and you'll see later, these are simply one piece of paper front and back that we're going to be showing you so that Virginia can look at Maryland and Maryland can look at Pennsylvania and Delaware and see what each other's doing, and the public can do that as well. So it'll be an actual tool for us to use and contrast and compare what our partners are doing. Some of the guidelines for pulling these together. Again, it's focused just on water quality. The specific milestone outcomes, we wanted to be able to roll them up. Even though we have a milestone for you today for each jurisdiction, we wanted to be able to roll them up into a single Baywide milestone to show you how we're going to accelerate progress. The outcomes of these milestones, obviously we're talking about reducing pollution, so you'll see things like the pounds of nitrogen and phosphorus that we're reducing, but also just as important are the acres of the practices, the miles of stream fence, any need to adopt new regulations or legislation or policies. And again, as much as we can, account for all actions that are occurring out there, not just what the state is doing, but what the federal government are doing, local government is doing, and what our outside stakeholders are doing. So some of the attributes before I jump into the milestone, we talk about 2-year milestones. This first year milestone, to be honest, is closer to a 3-year milestone because we're giving it to you in the middle of 09. It'll actually run through 09, 010, and 11, and then from there on out we'll be on a 2-year milestone track. We wanted to be very upfront and very candid. It doesn't do any good to come back to this council and to the public with milestones that are so aggressive that we have no chance of meeting them. So we have pushed the envelope, and I think you'll see that in these milestones, but we wanted to make sure that what we tell you we're going to be able to do, that we can do it. We have accelerated rates of implementation. There are commitments in these milestones to put new practices on the ground. And the other thing we want to make sure we can do is that if we're bringing this to you, it's got to be measurable, it's got to be trackable, it's got to be reportable so that we as ourselves can see if we're making progress, but that also the public can see very easily. So to jump into these milestones, again, what these are is one piece of paper front and back, and what you'll see, and I'm going to use Virginia as an example because that's my commonwealth and I know this plan the best of any of them, but on the first part, the first page is a bunch of numbers and graphs showing you the kind of the pollution reductions that we're going to achieve, where those reductions are coming from, and the kind of money that we'll have to put towards this effort. And then when you go to the back side, you're getting more into the practices that we're putting on the ground and the policies, legislation, regulations that we will actually use to achieve these reductions. So to walk you very quickly through the milestone in Virginia, what you're seeing here, and I apologize, I'm going to work from my piece of paper because my LASIK surgery from 5 years ago is failing me, and that screen ain't looking very big from up here, so my apologies for flipping paper. In Virginia, our annual load of nitrogen going into the bay is 70.5 million pounds a year. The blue line shows what we would have gotten down to if we had stayed at our past rate of progress, which is essentially the average of from 2000 to 2008. In Virginia, we've identified about 6 or 7 practices that we've already put on the ground. They're going to get us additional reductions down to that red line. What we have committed to in Virginia is to push that envelope even further and get us down to almost a 3.4 million pound reduction of nitrogen over the life of this milestone, getting you down to the bottom of that green line. So if you look at the take-home message from these milestones is if you look at the blue line, where we would have been pre-milestone, compared to what we have committed to do in these milestones, for Virginia, we are committing to an 86% increase in the rate of nitrogen pollution reductions that we will get. That is a significant increase, and when I show you the rolled up milestone in a minute, I think you'll see that other jurisdictions are being equally, if not more, aggressive. Phosphorus, a similar graphic. We have currently about 8.6 million pounds of phosphorus going into Virginia waters. The red line includes actions that we are currently putting on the ground that will get us significant reductions. The green line takes us further. Again, if you look at the blue line versus the green line, our milestone shows in Virginia that we're going to crank up progress by about 52% for phosphorus. And note that both of these, which you can see better on the nitrogen one, but the difference between the red dashed line and the green, we have additional reductions to get in Virginia. Make no mistake, these are not going to be easy reductions to get. The red line is what we think we can get based on what we currently have on the ground. We need to get down to that green line. We have a 1 million pound gap that we are committing to closing, and we are currently sitting down with the governor. We're looking at a vast array of budget options, legislative options, policy options to close that gap. And now that we're doing this in May, we go back and we have the next 5 or 6 months to actually craft that agenda. But we have a significant gap to go and close.